Quantum leaders, the innovator, consciousness as architect, not bystander. The innovator's natural style, spontaneous, imaginative, and discovery driven, makes them seem like conduits of inspiration, catching ideas from the wind. But quantum leadership reveals a deeper role. They are not passive recipients of ideas. They are architects of how reality responds to creativity. Every sketch, thought, prototype, and brainstorm they entertain is a signal to the system. This is how we build now. Their consciousness is not just part of the creative process. It designs the container for what becomes real. Every innovation reflects not only talent, but the frequency of the innovator's mind. With a motivation direction of towards, the innovator is wired to reach for what's not yet formed. But even their reaching carries code. If they pursue newness from frustration or restlessness, their systems may reflect instability. If they pursue from presence and awe, their creations hold resonance. The innovator becomes a conscious architect when they stop creating only to escape the old and start creating to midwife the emerging. Their intent is not just a motivation, it's a blueprint. Their attention focus on others makes them responsive to needs, trends, and collective shifts. But this orientation also shapes the design space. If they see others as underinformed, their systems will over-explain. If they see people as intelligent and ready, their designs become intuitive and elegant. Their assumptions about others become structural. The more they perceive brilliance, the more they make space for it to show up in how their work is used. With an external frame of reference, they seek feedback and energy from outside. But consciousness as architect means learning which voices to amplify. If they unconsciously elevate the loudest or most traditional opinions, their innovations begin mirroring the very norms they meant to challenge. When innovators learn to filter through resonance, listening not just to what's said, but to what feels alive, they build from intelligence, not consensus. Their options-based operational style supports rapid idea generation and reconfiguration. But each option entertained begins laying structural possibility. When too many ungrounded options are held simultaneously, chaos accumulates. But when they commit, not prematurely but rhythmically, to pathways with coherence, they turn chaos into architecture. The act of choosing is an act of structuring. Every yes is a frame. Every no clears space. Their general viewpoint helps them see ecosystems and concepts rather than granular data. But the architecture of innovation lives in how well they translate those concepts into designable form. A big idea with no structure becomes noise. The innovator evolves when they build templates, rituals, or flows that give shape to the abstract. They don't lose vision, they sculpt it. With a proximity work preference, they gain energy from creative exchange. But the field they co-create in is not neutral. It amplifies whatever tone they bring. If they bring overwhelm, the field scatters. If they bring clarity, the space becomes generative. Conscious innovators begin to realize, my inner state creates the shape of collaboration. When they tune their own frequency, the team enters resonance without coercion. Their emotional engagement is associated. They are their idea in its early stages. But if they remain merged too long, they can't shape with clarity. The architect must occasionally leave the building to see its design. When innovators learn to oscillate between deep immersion and cool refinement, they gain structural intelligence, the ability to love an idea and improve it. As mismatchers, they instinctively reject what feels old or conventional. But even rejection is architecture. When they fixate on what's wrong, they unconsciously enshrine it in their awareness. When they begin designing from alignment, asking not just what's broken, but what's ready to emerge, they shift from problem solvers to possibility sculptors. With an in-time orientation, they live in the now, which brings freshness. But architecture requires arc. When they pause to ask, what will this idea want to become in 5 years? They stretch from momentary relevance to structural foresight. They stop only reacting to the present and start shaping timelines that hold future resonance. And with a primary drive of activity, the innovator wants to build, test, create, move. But not all activity is generative. If done from urgency or over-identification, it creates noise and brittle systems. When activity flows from awareness, each action becomes a design statement. Every creative gesture, even a sketch on a napkin, becomes infused with intent. Innovation stops being output. it becomes invitation. In this light, the innovator is no longer just the dreamer or the brainstormer. They are an architect of possibility, shaping systems that speak the language of what's next. Their imagination does not merely decorate the edges of culture, it rebuilds its infrastructure. The more they realize that their thoughts, moods, and choices leave structural impressions, the more precisely they design. The more deliberately they think, the more coherent their work becomes. They don't just channel ideas, they build the future's foundation with awareness, alignment, and inspired structure. Quantum leaders, the innovator. Polarity creates the blueprint of experience. The innovator's natural style, playful, idea-rich, and perpetually evolving, thrives in the realm of possibility. But through the quantum lens, possibility does not arise from pure openness. It emerges from tension. Every creative act is an expression of polarity between inspiration and execution, originality and relevance, fluidity and form. For the innovator, mastering these dualities becomes essential. Polarity is not a limitation to be smoothed out. It's the very structure of invention. The innovator becomes a true creative force when they stop escaping the tension and start designing with it. With a motivation direction of towards, the innovator constantly reaches into what could be. The polarity here is vision versus discernment. If they stretch too far into abstract possibilities, their creations never land. But if they cling too tightly to execution, the vision dissolves. The innovator finds power when they oscillate, dreaming forward, then refining backward. When both future potential and present clarity are honored, creativity becomes architecture, not just expression. Their attention focus on others orients them toward collective benefit. The polarity shows up between service and sovereignty. Too much focus on others, and they may lose the edge of their originality. Too much autonomy, and they risk irrelevance. Innovators who hold both, what do I want to say, and how will it be received, become translators of the future. Their ideas strike the perfect chord between originality and resonance. With an external frame of reference, innovators draw inspiration from feedback and interaction. The polarity here is external stimulation versus internal clarity. When over-tilted toward feedback, they bend ideas to fit others. When too insular, they lose adaptive edge. The innovator's evolution lies in checking outward signals without abandoning inward direction, allowing feedback to shape but not define. Their options-based operational style thrives on abundance of ideas, but the polarity is expansion versus decision. Too much expansion leads to scattered brilliance. Too many decisions too soon stifle emergence. The innovator matures when they alternate, exploring broadly, then pruning with precision. Creativity sharpens when choice becomes not a limit, but a sculpting tool. Their general viewpoint brings sweeping patterns and future casting. The polarity here is theme versus application. Big vision needs anchoring. Without it, their ideas float. With too much grounding, the vision loses lift. When they toggle between conceptual flight and grounded implementation, innovators bring forth not just insight, but utility. With a proximity work preference, they draw energy from creative exchange. The polarity here is togetherness versus solitude. Over-collaboration risks dilution. Too much solitude risks detachment. Innovators gain depth when they alternate between brainstorming with others and incubating alone. What emerges is synthesis, originality shaped by resonance, not compromise. Their emotional engagement is associated. They are fully immersed in their process. The polarity shows up as passion versus detachment. Too much passion, and feedback feels threatening. Too much detachment, and the work loses soul. The innovator flourishes when they can feel into their creation and still step back to revise it. Their emotional agility becomes the heart of their iteration. As mismatchers, they instinctively challenge norms, but polarity here is disruption versus refinement. Constant reinvention can unravel stability. Yet blind acceptance halts evolution. Innovators become system evolutionaries when they use challenge not to destroy, but to renew, keeping what still works while reinventing what doesn't. Their in-time orientation makes them quick to pivot and act. The polarity here is speed versus strategy. Moving fast keeps energy alive, but too fast can bypass depth. Innovators grow when they let tempo shift. Some ideas ask for a sprint, others for a slow burn. They learn to time the rhythm of invention rather than rushing it. And with a primary drive of activity, innovators are doers, builders, experimenters. The polarity is action versus pause. Too much action fragments insight. Too much pause leads to inaction. When they move after feeling for the moment and rest after generating output, they enter regenerative cycles of creation. Their activity becomes wave-like, bursts followed by absorption, invention followed by integration. In this design, the innovator becomes not just a generator of novelty, but a sculptor of tension. They no longer fear polarity as conflict, but recognize it as structure. Their creativity becomes a harmonized system of opposites: vision and editing, solitude and dialogue, abstraction and application. When they learn to hold, feel, and build from within polarity, their work no longer flickers and bursts. It begins to land in culture as clarity, coherence, and meaningful change. They stop just creating ideas, they start shaping how ideas live. Quantum leaders, the innovator. Quantum entanglement, the thread between all things. The innovator's natural style, interdisciplinary, fluid, and always in motion, seems spontaneous on the surface. But through the principle of quantum entanglement, we see that their creativity is never isolated. Every idea, prototype, or iteration they birth is entangled with context, cultural waves, emotional undercurrents, team dynamics, unspoken needs. Innovation does not happen in a vacuum. The innovator is constantly weaving the invisible, entangling their insights with the collective field and drawing from it whether they realize it or not. When they become aware of this, their creativity stops being random and starts becoming resonant. With the motivation direction of towards, the innovator is propelled by what could be. But what they envision doesn't just affect them. It sends ripples through their environment. An idea shared in a meeting doesn't vanish. It alters mood, inspires curiosity, or triggers discomfort. The innovator leads when they realize their creative impulse is a tuning fork. Their what if becomes a systemic reorientation. Whether through excitement or dissonance, their ideation entangles others with new timelines. Their attention focus on others often fuels usefulness. But in the quantum field, it also means they are absorbing subtle emotional and energetic cues, often unconsciously. A colleague's hesitation, an audience's unspoken longing, or a cultural signal buried in trends becomes a seed for innovation. Innovators who recognize that their field sensitivity is not distraction, but data begin to trust their intuitive pulls, not as random, but relational. With an external frame of reference, innovators absorb feedback, trends, and behaviors to refine their creations. But this feedback loop is entangled. If they give too much weight to external responses, they begin co-creating with outdated signals. If they ignore it entirely, they break resonance. The mastery lies in discerning what the field is becoming, not just what it says. When they listen for what wants to emerge, not just what is, they align with quantum creativity. Their options-based operational style leads to multi-threaded exploration. But entanglement warns. Each option left dangling holds energy in the field. A half-finished course, an open tab with 12 articles, a maybe-later sketch. These aren't neutral. They fragment the field of coherence. The innovator grows when they close loops or choose consciously. What they do not finish still speaks. When they honor every creative thread, by completing, shelving, or releasing, it untangles their mental field and allows new clarity to arise. Their general viewpoint allows them to hold themes and patterns, but those patterns are relational, not abstract. An insight about design might heal a personal conflict. A shift in their emotional state might birth a tech innovation. Innovators entangle disciplines, emotions, and metaphors with ease, but they deepen when they do so consciously. The question is no longer, what do I want to create? It becomes, what wants to be expressed through me and this system right now? With a proximity work preference, they thrive in idea exchange, but entanglement means group fields affect them deeply. A team dynamic full of subtle resistance may stifle flow, even if it's not overt. Conversely, a group aligned in vision can supercharge innovation. When innovators become intentional about who and what kind of field they create in, their work gains a coherence that can't be faked. They're not just part of a team, they're part of a frequency. Their emotional engagement is associated. They feel their ideas as living things. But emotions are not personal, they're entangled transmissions. The frustration they feel during a project may belong to the team. The joy they feel might be anticipation of something collective about to land. Innovators mature when they stop labeling all feelings as theirs and begin reading them as signals of entanglement. The field speaks through them, and their work becomes more attuned when they listen. As mismatchers, they see what's off. But what they challenge ripples. When they reject an idea, others feel it. When they question a process, it creates quantum hesitation. This is not bad, but it must be wielded with care. The innovator's critical eye is not just personal, it changes the field. When they aim their mismatching not toward rebellion, but toward resonance, they become curators of integrity. They shape direction not just by disrupting, but by refining the entangled system through insight. Their in-time orientation lets them ride momentum. But the field may be moving at a different rhythm. An idea may be brilliant but premature. A conversation may be needed, but not now. Innovators gain potency when they attune not just to their inspiration, but to the readiness of the system. They begin innovating with time, not against it. And in that shift, their timing becomes uncannily right. And with a primary drive of activity, they are kinetic, generative, prolific. But entanglement means that every action, every launch, post, pivot, or word echoes. The field is listening. When they act from alignment, the response is amplification. When they act from frenzy or uncertainty, the response is fragmentation. The innovator becomes quantum when they pause before each action, not to hesitate, but to tune. Is this move clear? Is it entangled with integrity? In this way, the innovator is no longer just a lone creator. They are a weaver of fields. Their creative process is an ecosystem. Their ideas hold emotional and relational signatures. And when they realize that every thought, every project, every decision is entangled with what the system becomes next, they no longer try to force innovation into form. They listen it into coherence. Their innovation is not just clever, it's alive. It reverberates, not just launches. It lands, not just impresses. The innovator becomes the hidden chord that retunes the whole.